Welcome to this podcast in the Inclusive Diving series. Scuba diving is often seen as an adventure for the able-bodied, but the Handicapped Scuba Association, HSA, is proving that the underwater world belongs to everyone. Founded in 1981, HSA has been at the forefront of adaptive scuba training, creating opportunities for individuals with disabilities to experience the freedom and beauty of the ocean. Through specialized certification programs, dedicated instructors, and a global network of divers, HSA is not just teaching people how to dive, it's redefining what's possible. So let's get started.
Okay, so today we're going to do a deep dive into something pretty amazing. The Handicapped Scuba Association.
HSA.
Yeah, HSA, exactly.
Which is pretty incredible when you think about it, right? Like scuba diving.
Right.
You need all your limbs and all your faculties and everything, and these guys are like...
Yeah, and it's not just about, like, hey, we can get people with disabilities scuba diving.
Right.
It's this whole, like we were talking about before we hit record.
Yeah.
Like, it's a whole movement.
Yeah. It's about, like, inclusion and changing people's perspectives and...
Yeah, it's about empowerment.
And breaking boundaries and what you think is possible.
Yeah. So, and we've got some really great material here.
Yeah, some good stuff.
Yeah, that kind of digs into how this whole thing started, what their philosophy is, and we're going to go through all that today, and hopefully you'll be as amazed as we were.
Yeah, and like hopefully by the end of this deep dive, we'll all kind of understand like how did this, personal vision turn into this global movement?
Yeah.
It's pretty powerful.
Yeah. So let's start at the beginning.
Okay.
So HSA, we always say HSA, but it's the Handicapped Scuba Association.
Right.
And it all goes back to 1975.
Okay, back in the day.
Back in the day at UC Irvine.
Wow. California.
Yeah, so University of California, Irvine.
Okay.
And what's really interesting is it didn't start out as like this, we're going to be an advocacy group and we're going to, make this big change. It actually started as a research program.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
So they're like scientists?
Well, yeah, I mean, they were researching.
Yeah.
And what they were researching specifically was the changes in self-image for scuba diving students.
Okay.
Both with and without disabilities.
So they're learning together.
Yes, they're learning together.
Interesting.
Yeah.
That's really cool, actually, to think about, like, how does scuba diving affect?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's fascinating.
So, and here's the thing. This is really important. Everyone had to achieve the same standards.
Really?
For certification.
Yeah.
But the way they did it could be adapted.
Oh, okay. So it's not about making it easier. It's
about finding a way to...
adapting and making sure everybody meets that same...
Yeah.
That's really cool.
Yeah. So, like, if you needed to use different fins or if you needed to, use a different way of communicating underwater,
yeah,
they could adapt that.
Yeah.
But you still had to meet the same standard.
That's really cool. That speaks to a respect for the people involved, that
Yeah.
they're not just saying, oh, you can just do whatever you want. Like, no, you still have to be as safe and as skilled as everybody else. It's amazing.
So this brings us to the founder, Jim Gattaker.
Okay.
And he was and still is an NAUI instructor and course director.
So like a teacher of teachers, basically.
Okay, he's like the top level.
Yeah, the top dog.
Yeah.
So he must have had a lot of expertise going into this.
Yeah, and his involvement wasn't just professional.
Yeah.
He had a really personal stake in this.
Oh.
So back in 1972, he was in college, and he had this really devastating injury to his right arm.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, it was paralyzing.
Oh, that's awful.
Yeah.
I mean, I can only imagine what that must have done to his life and his perspective.
Yeah, so he's dealing with this, and a year later, in 1973, he starts scuba diving.
Oh.
Yeah. And for him, it became this like way to heal.
Okay.
Yeah, like emotionally recover and kind of rebuild his sense of self.
Wow. So even before he got in the water for the first time, just the idea of scuba diving was already having a positive impact on how he saw himself.
And he actually talks about this in some of the material we read, like how at first he was focusing on all the things he couldn't do anymore.
Right.
And then this idea of scuba diving came along, and it was like this glimmer of possibility.
Yeah, like a whole new world opened up to him.
Yeah.
Wow, that's really powerful.
And fast forward a bit, and he's organizing and leading the first scuba course for people with disabilities in 1975.
Okay, so this is where it all really begins.
Yeah, and he was like the driving force behind it.
That's amazing.
So from this like really personal experience, right, he establishes the Handicapped Scuba Association.
The HSA.
Yeah, and...
Okay, so what are like the core principles that they're founded on?
Well, It's funny because the acronym HSA, it's Handicapped Scuba Association.
Right.
But it also stands for courage, pioneer spirit, freedom, and camaraderie.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
So they're not just letters.
Yeah.
They're
like the foundation of
the values of the organization.
Yeah.
That's really cool. I like that.
And their mission statement is to provide leadership training and coordination for handicapped scuba diving around the world.
So they're not messing around. They're going global.
Yeah, it's global vision.
Okay.
And one of the things that really stuck out to me when we were going through the materials is that they have this belief that the spirit of adventure, doesn't have any limits.
Right.
And they see the underwater environment as this unique space where those limitations kind of fade away.
It's true. I mean, you think about being weightless.
Yeah.
It kind of puts everyone on an even playing field in a way.
Yeah, and so they see this as this huge opportunity for freedom and empowerment.
I mean, you can move in ways you never could.
Exactly. And it's really not just about the diving itself.
Okay.
They really want to make sure that everyone can access scuba diving,
right,
regardless of their challenges. So that means accessible dive sites, adaptive equipment.
So it's like the whole package they're thinking about.
Yeah, they're thinking about everything.
That's awesome.
And they're also really focused on building self-esteem,
okay,
independence, and that sense of accomplishment.
Which is huge, right? Because if you can overcome those challenges in one area of your life,
yeah,
it can kind of give you the confidence to do it in other areas, too.
It's like a ripple effect.
Exactly.
And, one of the things that we saw when we were going through the materials was how their objectives really connect with, the bigger picture of disability rights. So, there's this thing called the UN Convention on the Rights of Persons with Disabilities.
Oh, yeah, the CRPD?
Yeah, the CRPD.
Yeah.
And HSA's goals are directly in line with Article 30 of that convention.
And for our listeners who might not be familiar with all the legal jargon, what does that actually mean?
So basically, it's this international agreement that says people with disabilities have the same rights as everyone else.
Okay.
And that includes the right to participate in things like culture, recreation, leisure, and sports.
Right.
And HSA is actively working to make that happen in the scuba diving world.
That's really cool.
Yeah, so they're not just talking about it, they're actually doing it.
Yeah, putting it into practice.
Yeah, that they're providing adaptive training, they're working to create inclusive diving opportunities, all over the place.
Wow, so they're really making a tangible difference.
Yeah, accessibility and equality, that's their bread and butter.
Yeah, it's awesome.
And their training programs and certifications are super well designed to address the specific needs of divers with disabilities.
Okay.
But they also maintain really high safety standards.
So they're not cutting any corners.
No corners cut.
That's really important.
Yeah. And they have this system of certification levels for the divers themselves, their buddies and instructors.
Oh, that's smart.
Yeah. So it creates this really supportive learning environment.
Yeah. Everybody's learning from each other.
Yeah.
And supporting each other. That's amazing.
So, we've talked about their goals, their vision, and their training, but what's been the actual impact of all of this?
Yeah, that's the big question, right?
Yeah. And from what we've seen, it's been huge.
Okay, tell me more.
Scuba diving has this incredible therapeutic and liberating potential for people with disabilities.
Yeah, I mean, just from what we've discussed so far, it seems like a perfect fit in a lot of ways.
Yeah, and Jim Gattaker, he actually became a spokesperson for diving with disabilities, way back in 1982.
Wow, so he's been at this for a while.
Yeah, and he was leading workshops and, really spreading the word.
Wow, that's dedication.
Yeah, and he worked with, the big names in underwater education, like PADI and NAUI.
Okay.
To develop these physical performance requirements, specifically for divers with disabilities.
So he's not just doing his own thing. He's collaborating with the major players in the industry.
Yeah, and it was a big undertaking. It took over 2 years to finalize those requirements and their multi-level certification system.
Wow.
And what's really cool about the certification system is that it allows for people with a really wide range of disabilities to become fully certified scuba divers.
So they're not just getting a participation trophy, they're actually
the real deal.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah, and Jim Gattaker, he's gotten a ton of recognition for all this work.
I bet he has.
Yeah, so in 2018, he got the Historical Diving Society's Pioneer Award.
Wow.
And that was specifically for his work in adaptive diving.
Yeah, that's huge.
And then just this year, 2024, he got the NOGI Award.
Which is the Oscars of the diving world, right?
Yeah, it's a big deal. Yeah. And that was for his work in advancing diving education and inclusivity.
So he's getting recognized for his work on a global scale.
Yeah, and back in 2015, he got the DEMA Reaching Out Award, and that was for making diving more accessible for people with disabilities.
So he's really hitting all the major areas of impact.
And get this, he was inducted into the International Scuba Diving Hall of Fame in 2020.
Wow, what an accomplishment.
Yeah.
So he's a legend, basically.
Yeah, and it wasn't just those awards. He was featured in People magazine. He got awards from SDI, NAUI.
Wow.
And he even got an American flag that was flown and folded underwater by wounded warriors.
Wow.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible.
A really powerful tribute.
Yeah. But, his mission isn't over.
Of course not.
He's still working to promote equality and inclusion for everyone.
That's amazing.
And their website, like if you go to the HSA website, it's got a ton of resources.
Okay.
So they have travel tools so you can find accessible dive locations.
Oh, that's helpful.
Training schedules for instructor and buddy courses.
So if you're inspired by this, you can actually get involved.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
And they even have like an HSA store.
Oh, cool. So you
Yeah.
can like rep the brand.
Yeah, exactly.
I like that.
And they have this section called Divers in Action.
Oh, cool.
And it's videos of HSA scuba divers, and it's really inspiring.
Okay. I'm definitely checking that out after this.
Yeah, it's awesome. So to kind of wrap things up,
okay.
We started with this research program at UC Irvine that was all about inclusion.
Right.
And then we have Jim Gattaker's personal journey, which is just incredible.
Yeah, what a story.
And from that, he created this organization that's dedicated to empowerment and accessibility.
Yeah, and changing the world.
Yeah, and their work is directly supporting, these global disability rights.
The CRPD.
Yeah, and Jim Gattaker has gotten all this recognition for his work, and he deserves every bit of it.
Absolutely.
So it's really amazing to see how this passion that he had turned into this worldwide movement.
Yeah, and it makes you think, like, what are the other areas where we can apply these principles of adaptation and inclusion? You know, it doesn't have to be scuba diving. It can be anything.
Yeah, like how can we create more opportunities for everyone?
Yeah.
Regardless of their challenges.
Yeah.
It's
a good question to think about.
Yeah, so that's something for everyone to ponder.
Yeah.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
It was awesome.
We hope that you now have an understanding of the origins and amazing work of the Handicapped Scuba Association and its creator Jim Gattaker. Our next podcast will be about Scuba Diving International Scubability programs. We hope that you will join us to explore this recreational diving training agency's approach to inclusive diving. Until then, safe diving.